All right, Dan. I think it's time.
Time for what?
Time to explain the
Sorry, hold on. That sounded a little too like we're doing an ad. Hey Dan, it's time. Time for what, Charlie?
Let me tell you, Dan. For just $2.99, I've never pretended to be good at this. All right. I think it's time for us to talk about the water tower.
The water tower. Why do you think that we need to talk about it? Explain.
So
I think I have an idea, but
I don't know how much you actually followed what happened last week, but
we got an influx of people, didn't we?
yeah, we started getting feedback from people that aren't related to us. And that was really exciting. I thought it was really exciting. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Basically, you sent me a screenshot. It's weird because like I kind of feel bad because I'm the one that's actually in like the marketing degree program, and I'm doing the least amount of marketing between the two of us at the moment. And you're like getting on Reddit and doing stuff and bugging people on Twitter and like all kinds of stuff that are absolutely great ideas, but I just feel like I haven't been able to do anything, which honestly I haven't, because I started school back up and it's been like go to class, then go to work, then come home, take the dogs out, that whole deal.
Well, so honestly, I wouldn't say I've been doing a real amount of marketing. I subscribe to the podcast subreddit mostly so I could try and get advice to try and solve some problems I was getting when we were trying to get this all stood up. It's mainly a subreddit for people who make podcasts. But
Okay.
if somebody, sometimes somebody will post something about podcasts, what podcast do you like or whatever, and I'll throw ours out there as well as other ones that I really like, because I don't want to be too like advertisey. And
yeah, and that's something that I always kind of steered. Now, there's plenty of like social media avenues that I use just sort of regularly, but there's some that I've just never really used much. I know what Reddit is. I have a good sense of what it is. There's been times where I've gone to Reddit pages for things, but like I remember there was something. It was probably like a long time ago whenever I was doing a blog. Like I signed up for a Reddit page because like, oh, well, maybe I can like tack onto something and this is a way to like promote it. And then like something like in the terms and conditions or on some intro page, it was like very clear about like, hey, we don't tolerate that stuff here. And it wasn't saying it wasn't allowed. It was just saying like, this is not for like promoting things. It's not to spam and all this sort of stuff. It's for like a specific use. And so, yeah, like I remember being kind of hesitant, like on how exactly you're supposed to do Reddit. And it seems like what you did made a bit more sense because you were actually going to something that's what it was for. And a question was asked and you're giving suggestions for podcast listens. So
right. I wasn't like posting something saying, hey, I started something. You guys should check it out. Although people will sometimes do that, and it's a little, and I'd like to, and we might get to it this episode, I'd like to go through and talk about the different social medias that we both use, because I know we both use a lot of the same platforms, but not all the same ones, and we both use them differently, and I always find that interesting. But yeah, in regards to that, like Reddit, it comes down to like individual subreddits all have their own different rules and everything, and so depending on where you're at, if you break the rules, they'll quickly come in and take out your content.
Oh, gotcha. So with things that you've been doing on Reddit and Twitter this week, we've gotten some new listeners. And how does this relate to the water tower?
Yeah, so somebody actually said that they listened on Reddit and compared us to Hello Internet, which is like my favorite podcast. And so I made a little funny, tweet, or I thought it was funny, tweet comparing, or just saying like how excited I was that somebody was comparing us to my favorite podcast. And then that person, or somebody who claimed to be that person, actually responded to me on Twitter. And then I got all excited because I'm talking to somebody, again, who's not related to us, that's actually listening. I saw that person was from England, which also really excited me because the whole people listening from different countries thing has always gotten me really excited, which is why we always post
the flags every time we get a new one.
Yeah. And so I made a little joke like, "Oh my gosh, this person's from England. How are the water towers over there?"
Yeah.
Because I think throughout this podcast, me and you have made just random jokes, or especially in our like social posts, we'll randomly joke about the water tower. But that's
Yeah, because
because
people we know what the water tower significance is and why that's our cover for
right.
artwork and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the cover. That is what our icon is for the podcast, and that's what like our cover page is and all of our social media accounts. Like on Facebook and stuff, our banner is the glorious green water tower. And so
Right.
it's always been there. It's always been a thing, but we've never really explained it. And actually, let's start with explaining even why it's a thing for us. So, like the name of the podcast. You want to talk about how that kind of came about really quick?
Yeah, so A Town is basically just like like a weird slang term that people kind of poke fun of ourselves for Arnold. So it's like the town of Arnold, which is like a midwestern town. It's most
It's
people
definitely
that aren't
not a cool enough town to actually have its own nickname.
right. Like most of the times we just tell people when we go elsewhere St. Louis because we're about 30 minutes out from the city, but it's definitely not a city or metropolis area of any
Right.
sort. So,
And
um
like whenever we were starting this, we were trying to figure out, what we wanted to call it. But
yeah,
we didn't really want to nail down topics because we didn't know what this would eventually become. And so we kind
right.
of dialed back to what is this thing actually going to be? And really what it's going to be is us two talking. And the thing
Right.
that sort of binds us two together is the city that we both grew up in, which is, this small Midwestern town.
Right, right. Yeah, and so the significance of the water tower in that town is not that I mean, I'm sure there's other examples like this somewhere in the world, and if there is, I would love to see that if any listeners know, but we have a kind of unique water tower and some towns are known for that, but ours was unique in that it actually had it had our town name across the front of it, and it was green, and so it was like this ugly green color that it's sort of like in a twisted way became the pride of the town, at least for most civilized people in the town.
Yeah, I don't know. Did your parents grow up here?
My mother had always kind of grown up in different areas, like
Gotcha.
around, but my dad grew up all kinds of different states and stuff like that, so he was not from around here.
So my mom was here whenever she was a kid, and she always talked about being really embarrassed by it because
Oh,
it's
really?
not just green and tall. It is at the top of our city. Like, you know,
Yeah,
we're not like it's not a mountainous area, but it's a pretty hilly area. But there's
yeah, big open shopping area, and it's standing right there.
and it's this hill that sits right over the major highway that comes through our town. So like anybody in the Midwest, really, if they drive through this area, they're going to drive right past our town. And if they drive past our town, they're going to see this gigantic, sort of garish, green, gigantic tower that has in extremely, almost comically bold text, just the word Arnold. That's it.
Which one might also alternatively describe it as a light for lost people in high places.
Yes, yes. It's a beacon of hope, really.
Right. Anywhere in the world, if you get to the highest point in your local town, whether you're in Britain or Russia or France, all of our listeners, you just get to a high point and you just look on the horizon, and that's the Arnold Water Tower there.
Yeah,
You're seeing
yeah.
it.
That it's a consistent thing across the globe. If you get high enough, you
Right.
can see the water tower. That's definitely how
Right.
that
Because
works.
the earth is flat.
So, and when we grew up, when me and you, we'd go on like these trips with our church, and we thought we were hilarious because we'd be, on the West Coast somewhere, and somebody would ask where we're from, and we would just say Arnold,
Yeah.
and they would look at us with blank stares, and we'd go, the Arnold
The
Water
water
Tower.
tower.
And by that point, they would be like, these guys are morons. Let's just nod our heads and go on.
Sometimes they would just go, "Oh, okay." Yeah, like as if they
Yeah.
kind of knew, like I guess that's a thing. And I remember there was one time there was like some big group that came like a youth group doing some sort of like musical thing or something, and we were supposed to like hang out with them one Sunday because they were like leaving to go back the next day, and they were like Southern or something like that. And we were like asking them, so like, what stuff have you guys done in St. Louis? You go to like the City Museum, the Arch, those sorts of things. And we're like, you guys went to the Water Tower, right? And they're like, huh? We're like, the Water Tower. And they're like, no, we didn't see that. We're like, oh yeah, the Arnold Water Tower is a big deal.
Look it up.
And they're like, oh well, we'll have to talk to our advisors about that. And so like we just sent them off, never saw them again. And I pray that they showed up the next day, like a group of 20 at the Arnold Water Tower.
And it was worth it. And they were like, that was good advice. That's probably what they said.
So it's sort of this like tongue-in-cheek thing that has developed into legitimate pride,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah, like whenever I went to college, I stayed in the state, but I was pretty far away. And I would make that same joke that, we made as kids. I would say, I'm from Arnold, the Arnold Water Tower. And
Right.
it surprised me how many people said, oh yeah, that's 20 minutes from my house, or that's 4 hours from my house. Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like
Noticeable.
there's a water tower in a small town on my way to whenever we go down and visit some friends at the lake in Arkansas.
Right.
And that town's name is Licking. And my 12-year-old self knew exactly where Licking was, and okay, we're halfway because we're at Licking. And so that was
Yeah.
what this was. It was like this landmark for people. So a lot of people
Yeah.
actually knew what it was.
And then came the dark years.
Yes. Or the light blue years, as you might call them.
The blues, the blue time period.
Yes.
The blue period.
The local paper, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, definitely took advantage of in their clever titles. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't, but
Yes.
I could imagine. What about the leader? What did they do?
Who knows? Actually, I make that joke. I'm pretty sure that the local paper, the Arnold Leader, did.
Yeah.
That is how I found out what was going to happen to our precious tower.
So what was going to happen to our precious tower? Tell the audience.
So they were going to paint our glorious green water tower a light shade of blue so that it blended in with the sky and nobody would notice our great,
And the rest of the world.
and the rest
is
of
what
yeah
blended in.
yeah now you can't see it from London because it just blends in.
Right. And not only that, they ripped Arnold off the front of it. Now it says like Water District and some numbers or something like that across the top.
Yeah, they took away the bold Arnold plain black text and replaced it with, I think, also a light blue Public Water District number 1 or something like that.
What they did was they stripped our identity.
They really did.
Is what they did. That's what it comes down to.
Needless to say, this caused a public outcry, and
there was literally a keep it green hashtag that was going pretty strong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure though that accidentally coalesced with a totally different movement somewhere in the West Coast.
Yeah, it was getting lost in a sea of like environmentalist stuff.
Yeah,
People didn't really think through it. I actually did see that. It was pretty funny. But one of the more viral things that I've ever done, which I didn't realize would pick up so much steam, was I remember that year that they painted it blue. It was like close to Christmas time, I think, and somewhere around there it started like flooding near there. And I remember like saying like, I think this is punishment from God for painting the water tower blue.
Yep.
And like so many people were like sharing that and liking it, and not like people I had no idea who they were.
Yeah, people were genuinely upset.
And it was just like this really funny camaraderie. Yeah.
And the only thing we got out of that was a kind of funny news article where some random guy who was there with a bunch of paint was interviewed by a local newspaper, and he's like, well, I got the paint already, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And they added Arnold, Missouri back to it. Granted, underneath the text, Public Water District number 1,
right?
But needless to say.
Basically, our attempt at putting it in the artwork for our podcast and naming our podcast A-Town is an attempt to eternalize those years and those times that we had, to immortalize the Arnold Water Tower.
Well, and it's not lost. So after this whole debacle happened, I believe the mayor of Arnold and a group of people have formed a like second historical society next to the one that already existed, and they're trying to get all the paperwork and stuff through to like get the water tower declared a historic landmark or something.
Oh, I hope so.
Which I think would mean that, because the whole problem with this is that the water district is the one who owned the tower, not the city. And so they
Right.
just decided to paint it and didn't ask anybody. And they were completely thrown off. They didn't think anybody would care. And,
Yeah.
they had already bought all the paint and everything. So there was nothing that they weren't
Arnold's
going to
always
spend.
kind of been like that. I mean, there's some good things they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those that's going to trash them,
Easy.
but we've gotten sort of rid of like that township seems like they've gotten rid of every single thing that could conceivably be considered historical in any way and put a Walmart or Quick Trip there. Which I'm a fan of Walmart and Quick Trip. Don't get
Not
me
gonna
wrong,
lie,
but
I don't know what you're talking about.
I just feel like there used to like if you think about the layout of Arnold and like all the stuff that was there when we were little, like it's completely different geography, just
I would
across the
agree, but
board.
I don't know what
And
historical
I'm not
things
saying
were
it's
there
all
before.
bad. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying there was like a famous battle fought there or nothing. I'm just saying.
Well, there was. It's ongoing and it's about keeping the water tower green.
I don't know. I just feel like a lot of like old buildings. I feel like a lot of old buildings and things that weren't. Now there were some old buildings and businesses that were terrible looking that needed to be replaced, but there's a lot of stuff that not necessarily historic, but just felt like, well, why you got to tear that down to put in a bunch of, Deerbergs and all that sort of stuff. That sort of stuff is what I'm talking about. Obviously, you might not care as much about that as I do, and it's not really a huge deal. But I don't know. I just feel like we don't keep anything. Like we were an old town that had some old businesses and stuff, and everything's just sort of like changing over into brand new things. And it's sort of depressing because I like when
I'm with
townships can
you.
like kind of keep that old.
I can't think of what old buildings were there that aren't now. That aren't like old decrepit houses or farms.
True. Nah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I think the problem isn't that Arnold
good
tears
stuff.
down their cool historical stuff. It's that it doesn't have cool historical stuff.
It had some cool historical stuff.
What are you talking about? Like the old Burger King or something? I can't.
Yeah, like the old BK Lounge.
Classic. Ah, what a place.
Right. Is that still there? I'm trying to think of
Well,
what does that even look like anymore?
It's just a parking lot. They took the building down.
Oh. Oh yeah,
it's not even
by
a
the
parking
Fox
lot
district now, or by the school district. Yeah.
Right.
Man, it's so weird to me because like I'm not that far away from Arnold, but like I feel like I'm coming to town whenever I drive down the highway to come down there because I've lived up near St. Louis. It was just about 40 minutes out now for so long, and I'm so used to being like up in the new area that I live at, and I feel like I'm like taking a special trip to come back home whenever I come down to Arnold. Like I told you this, but whenever we saw a movie at the old Arnold movie theater, which I've always seen as terrible and disgusting, like I actually kind of enjoyed it because it was like this nostalgic feeling. Because I remember whenever the theater was first built, and I have a lot of memories there. So it was like this weird, like any other time if I was living there, I'd be like, no, let's go to a nicer theater. But for some reason, because I hadn't been there in so long, it was like nice.
Yeah, so that pretty much explains our water tower obsession. I think we had a glorious water tower. It's now less glorious, but there's slight hope on the horizon that one day it could retain its former glory.
Right.
And our podcast is just a small, humble attempt to try to keep it alive.
What's that line from The Gladiator? What we do in this life echoes in eternity.
Holy crap.
Thunder.
That was really crazy timing.
Did you get it too?
I could hear it on your end, but it was like, what you do in this life echoes in eternity.
Yeah. Epic.
I seriously thought you were making a sound effect at first.
No.
I don't know if you saw this conversation with this Englander. I don't know what town he's actually from, but somewhere in England. about the water tower thing. Did you see this at all?
No. I saw parts of it, I think, but I didn't follow it.
So I made the joke about the water tower, and I said something along the lines of, we like our water tower. It's kind of an inside joke. Maybe we'll talk about it next episode. And
Yeah.
well, first he said he thought that our icon looked like he thought it was a Mario pipe, which I can kind of see.
Oh,
Um,
that's a compliment.
yeah, I think that's okay. But then he looked it up on Google Maps, which it's still green there, and he said, "Okay, that's a good-looking water tower," which I think made me happier than when I found out that somebody across the world is listening to this thing we make.
Right.
And then he sent me a picture of their water tower with a news article that goes with it. And he said, "This is what ours looks like. They're repainting it. And apparently that's a big deal." And I almost lost it at work whenever I saw that. I was like, "Oh my gosh. Apparently this is a universal problem across the world."
Yeah.
Well, here's what's interesting. This sent me down a bad path because this happened right before I drove down 44 to Springfield for a Labor Day trip, and there's not a whole lot on major highways like that to look at, but every single town has a really interesting water tower, and it kind of got me really into water towers all of a sudden. And now I'm like looking up different water towers, and I'm like, "Ooh, this is a really cool one, and this is another cool one." I haven't checked. I bet Reddit has a water tower dedicated subreddit.
I'm actually trying to find so let me see if I can find I can't find the one that he posted. I see the stuff that he found on Google, which is pretty cool. I guess it's like what, Google Earth?
Yeah, Google
Yeah,
Earth
and
still
it
has.
does look majestic.
It really does.
God, I love that tower.
I know,
Too
it's
bad.
so beautiful. Yeah,
Not
if
anymore,
you look
but
at our
it was.
Wikipedia page, you look at anything and it still shows the green water tower. It's really
Yeah,
it's really messed up. So,
it's great.
yeah, he sent me that thing of his, and it looks really bizarre. This is I'm going to send you a link right now and get your reactions of it. So this is the Anglian Water Tower. No,
England?
Anglian Water. No, Anglian.
Oh, wow.
Anglian Water to repaint Spalding Water Tower.
It looks like the Dome of the Rock in the middle of Mecca.
Yeah,
What
it's
is
really
that?
interesting. And so I said something to him like, "Holy cow, is that what they all look like?" And he sent me a different
Wow.
picture of what their normal ones look like, which was also really interesting.
That's amazing. We got to link this stuff so people can
I
actually
plan
know what
on
we're
it.
talking about. But
So I think we've even made this joke before to each other, but I'm deadly serious. We need a hashtag for people sending us pictures of their water tower, literally just so that I can see what different water towers look like. This isn't a marketing thing. I just legit think this is awesome. Here, I just sent you this other one. This is what like a normal water tower apparently looks like in London or England. Isn't that awesome looking?
So it's like an upside down birdie.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me.
Yeah.
There's one in Illinois. I think it's Wren Lake that it's a golf ball on a tee. You ever seen that one?
Yeah.
Water towers
I
are like
haven't.
this awesome expression of what your city is. Like,
Yes.
you figure most of these cities don't have a whole lot going on in terms of architecture, but every single one of these little cities has, because of physics, this giant tall thing that they put in the middle of their town, preferably in the highest point of their town. And so they all have this sort of unique, interesting feel to it. And now I just want to see all the water towers.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you have a cool picture of your home water tower that's not Arnold Water Tower, because a lot of people we know listen to that.
I'm
or
not
live
lying.
there.
Send me your pictures of the Arnold Water Tower. That'd be fine.
Don't at me.
At me. I'll send them all over to Dan anyway.
Yeah.
Our text, our iMessage will just be like massive lists of water towers from now on.
You've never heard that phrase before? Don't at me?
Yeah.
Because like on Twitter. Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
Did I react weirdly?
That.
No, I know what that means.
Yeah. Okay. All right,
I was confused because I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want thousands of pictures of water towers in their Twitter.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, that's a neat water tower though.
Yeah.
The original one, not that tennis thing.
I think they're both neat.
Okay.
They're both their own special snowflakes. So we need a hashtag though, Mr. Marketing Man.
Hashtag show us your tower. No. That could go wrong. How about hashtag A Town Water Tower? Or no, that's too long.
I
Hashtag
know, I was thinking like weekly water tower, but that seemed way too long too.
man, I don't know. Man, you really put me on the spot here.
I know you got to do it.
People don't come up with hashtag campaigns in a second.
Yep. Nope. The good ones do. If you want to make it in this career, Dan, you're gonna have to come up with hashtags.
Hashtag A Town Tower.
A Town Tower.
Yeah, it's tower hashtag for A Town podcast.
Eh,
No slashes. Hashtag
right.
A Town Tower.
A Town Tower. That works.
I just like it. Yeah, it rolls off.
Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue.
Cool. All right, that works for me. And I took some pictures when we were down in Springfield because I was all excited about it. So I'm going to start that. And then I'm going to go to Reddit and see if I can find a Reddit subreddit dedicated solely to water towers because I bet you that exists. So this whole thing with getting feedback from people we don't know and it kind of sparking off of a conversation on Reddit and then that kind of continuing a thing on Twitter got me really excited about this podcast. And pretty much immediately I was then traveling down to Springfield where I couldn't really do any like work per se. But I wanted to do something related to it. And so I was like, maybe I can like see if I can start more conversations on Reddit or something. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to do like the promotion thing there because that's not really what you're supposed to do. And so I was like, maybe there's a way I can do it on Twitter, but like I have no idea how to do it with, you know, our actual Twitter account. I don't know what to do. I'm not good at copy like you are. And so then I had what I thought at the time was a super original, awesome idea, which was I bet there's lots of people that are about to travel for Labor Day that are just posting out into the cloud on Twitter, show me or give me your podcast recommendations. So I did a search and lo and behold, there was, you know, hundreds of people that were asking for it. And I was like, oh, I can just jump on there and tell them about ours. Like that seems, it felt like it wasn't shameless promotion because they were asking for it, right?
Right.
But very quickly what I found out was the same like 5 people were showing up on every single one. And then I realized I had just joined this like group of people who just shamelessly plugs. And honestly, a lot of them I'm pretty sure were bots because they were literally the exact same thing over and over again. And then I felt really, really dirty. Should I feel like I'm doing something wrong whenever I do that?
No, because I think bots are annoying because people don't like that nothing is actually interacting with them. But I think if you're actually giving suggestions and then giving feedback if someone responds to you, I actually think it's fair game. That's pretty genius. So like
oh, I'm genius. Thank you.
Well, I don't remember the example, but I remember I had a marketing class last semester and they gave us an example of like some company that sells like product A, let's say. They like a customer was complaining about it to them on their Twitter profile. And, you know, obviously this happens all the time. And then the other company that also sells something similar to product A swooped in and said, hey, I'm sorry to hear you're having such trouble with that. Like, you should try ours. It's a lot better. And like he made the point, he's like, if you're part of like a marketing campaign and you're not doing this on social media, you're doing it wrong. And like to him, it seemed to be like you keyword searching for things to interact with people is like the thing that you're supposed to do. I don't think I get it feeling like dirty and spammy because I've told you before, like that's why I didn't want to do the Twitter thing because I use Twitter for myself, but I don't use it for those sorts of purposes of promotion because I hate doing that. But I also realize like that is what people do. Like it's all about like hashtag campaigns and interacting with people.
And for some reason it feels like less weird when it's a company, but for some reason like when I was seeing like other people doing the same thing, I don't know, it felt weird.
I get it, but that's just our frame of mind because we are just two people doing that just started a thing where you don't feel like you're in official capacity.
That's true. And like from that person's perspective, they're not seeing the same thing over and over again, I guess.
Right, but I think part of successful marketing, which I'm not going to pretend like I'm great at it or have really done anything major, but you know, I think part of it is being just confident and just acting like, oh yeah, like Because that's the thing is like I wanna get us more Twitter followers because I'll tell you now, like I think we got like our Twitter profile because you have to use Twitter differently than Facebook has only a handful of followers. Like I'm not even
Right.
sure if we're in the double digits. If we are, that's news to me. But on Facebook we are. Like we have a lot of followers on Facebook. And the
Because that's where our
difference
family's at.
yeah. But the difference between the two, like you really have to be one of those types of people that just spends all day on there. But yeah, so like if someone told me like, "Hey, follow me because I'm doing XYZ," and I thought it was remotely interesting, got to their profile and saw like 60 followers, I wouldn't follow that thing. Now that just might be me, and I might have a different type of interaction, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
But I think you represent probably a lot of people. Like, I
yeah,
remember when we were first starting this, it was kind of the reverse with audio quality, where you were like,
right.
well, I don't think people care that much about, extremely good audio quality. And I was like, oh man, like if I start a podcast within the first 5 minutes, if the audio quality doesn't seem very good, like I can't get through it.
Well, true. Well, to be fair, my point was that ours is good enough to be one of those better sounding ones anyway. And I was saying I don't think we need to get it perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I actually do agree with you on that because there's plenty that I'll just shut off if it's like, oh, this is a Skype session that I'm
Right.
just tuning into. So I get that, but there have been a couple. The reason why I say like I think you just own it and just be like, just act an attitude like, oh yeah, we're a thing, we're a product, and we want you to join us because like there's been plenty of podcasts that to this day I'm still not exactly certain whether I'm one of 5 listeners or one of millions. And it's just because what they do it so well that it's just like, okay, for this thing that I'm looking for, you're doing it. You're doing a great job. You've sold it to me. You have good artwork on your stuff. You have good notes and all this sort of stuff and good structure and sound quality. And so I just like, okay, yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I am one of millions of listeners where I in reality, I could be their only subscriber.
Yeah, most of the time I don't even see somebody's Twitter profile until I've been listening to them for a while, and then if they're like high enough on my list, I might actually follow them on Twitter. But most of my podcasts in my podcast player, I've never looked at their Twitter profile.
Yeah.
I might follow the person,
Yeah.
but usually not the actual account. It's, the podcast account.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah, I get your hesitancy with Twitter. I just don't know if it's also something where it's like I simultaneously recognize like what I feel uncomfortable about though is the thing you're supposed to do.
Well, and I've kind of come up with a little framework that makes me not feel so bad. So like I sort of set a rule for myself that I will never copy and paste it, which is kind of annoying, but like it means that every single one I type out is a little different. And
Yes.
usually I'll like poke at the person's profile and maybe try to make it relevant, but rarely is that actually helpful. But I
Right.
don't know. I figure if I type it out manually, I'll say it a little different every time, and then I feel a little less dirty inside. Even if that doesn't make
Now,
any difference at all to the end user, at least I feel better about it.
I will say where I do think it feels spammy, but this is still sort of I see people do this all the time and I know it works, but I would never want to do this personally, even if people told you to, is I'm not a big fan of like Game of Thrones is trending. And so you're like telling people to listen to your podcast that has nothing to do with Game of Thrones. We don't even mention it on the Game of Thrones hashtag. Like that's the sort of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Like I've seen
Just throwing on irrelevant tags or
yeah, like
hashtags. Yeah.
I saw like I think it was Jake Tapper or someone like that I follow, like a news person on Twitter, and they were retweeting like someone. It was like kind of funny, like it was someone like trying to sell something and like shoehorning in the hurricane in Texas hashtag, and it's just kind of
Oof.
like, oh really? So that has anything to do with it?
Yeah, that's
and
that's rough.
Right, but it doesn't even have to be a tragedy. It's just like anything. Like I see people do that all the time. Like I'm one of those people that while I'm Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or those really big shows, like you said before, part of the fun is like being on the hashtag watching it live. And so I'll do that. And then every so often you just see someone like, hey, check out my blog. And it has nothing to do with Walking Dead. And they're just
Do you
like,
need
and
pliers?
yeah, and it's not just the Walking Dead hashtag, it's like the top 10 hashtags all
Ugh,
like connected to it.
yeah.
It's like stuff like that where it's like, that might work, but I'm not willing to sink that low.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not quite desperate enough yet.
Right. But no, I think it just takes a lot of effort, which is another reason why I didn't really want to do it, because I knew like being in school and work like right now, it would take a lot of effort to like stay on top of Twitter, which is why I told you I didn't really feel like
Yeah.
doing it back when we first started this. And
Yeah, it's interesting. The interacting part is easy and fun. It's the sort
yeah,
of just yelling out into the void thing that is
yeah,
really hard to do. Like
right,
posting things and knowing that nobody's going to see them, or if they do, nobody's going to interact, is kind of like, it feels like a total, like you feel like a total loser, and it's like a waste of your time.
yeah,
And then every once in a while you get even the slightest reaction, even if it's like just a like, and it like hits all those endorphins in your brain, whatever. I'm sure there's plenty of studies on that where, likes or hearts or whatever
yeah,
trigger that,
yeah,
effect in your brain.
definitely.
But like whenever that happens, then all of a sudden you're like, ooh, I want to do this all over the place. And, then you're all into it again, especially when you have an actual interaction with somebody. So we have written on our show notes, the Dark Knight debacle.
Yeah.
What are you talking about there?
So I'm just going to throw this out there because I actually saw you tweet something about it, and I thought it was just sort of a minor thing. And I think you
Oh,
probably did too, but it actually became a trend later in the week, a couple days after you did. And basically, what it was is some Twitter person like tweeted this like gif of it was a scene from The Dark Knight where like the Joker is dressed up as a nurse and takes his mask off, and then like Two-Face freaks out. And
right.
it was spliced in such a way to where it makes it look, and it was like said somehow in the tweet like, oh, that moment whenever Two-Face realizes that it's actually the Joker, and it was meant to be like, oh, this is this great movie and this horribly done scene that makes no sense, because why wouldn't the character in the movie notice the Joker with like makeup on? And
Right. Yeah, it was like my favorite part of the Dark Knight is when Two-Face can't recognize Joker with a nurse mask on.
yeah, yeah.
And when you
And
watch it, it does
so
make you literally like laugh out loud in place because it's cut
yeah,
really
the
tight and it is a comically
right.
like delayed reaction.
Yeah, exactly. And so like when it started trending, like all kinds of people were like talking about it and being like, "Oh man, this wrecked my movie. Man, that is stupid," and like all this sort of stuff. And you also tweeted, I guess, a director or
Yeah,
someone.
that's Dan Trachtenberg. He
Oh,
did
okay.
10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I recognize the name now. I just
Yeah.
couldn't remember who it
He's
was.
great. You should follow him if you don't. If you like movie stuff, he's really
I
good.
probably will. But he like responded to that and like retweeted it and said like, there's a reason why when you're watching the movie and actually see the scene play out, you don't have this reaction that everybody seems to have. And I think I agree with him. Now, I almost like before we recorded, and I probably should have got out the movie to actually rewatch the scene just to like have it vividly within my mind. But I kind of feel like that way. Like I feel like everybody's like, I mean, it's funny, it's hilarious. And you could tell the original guy that posted it was just kind of thought it was funny, and
Yeah,
there was even some of his friends on it that were like, "Holy cow, man, this just went viral."
yeah.
Like whoever it was, like didn't expect it.
That's always one of the fun things about Twitter is when you actually click on the original tweet and the next
Yeah,
one is the person going, "Oh my gosh, my phone battery's dying from notifications."
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I always want that to happen to me at some point in my life.
Yeah. So the original poster, I mean, he was taking it pretty well. Like it was just really kind of funny seeing his interaction. So I got nothing against him because I think he was just joking around. But but yeah, like a lot of people were taking it like really serious, and like then of course you get the types of people that hate Batman or the Dark Knight movie, and they're just like, yeah, see, this is why it sucked,
Yeah.
and it's stuff like that where it's like, no, this isn't a big deal or anything, but I did just want to point out that like if you watch the original movie, which I've seen several times, and I'm sure you have as well, the scene context before it does change that reaction and make it feel natural.
Yeah, well, and
So,
another thing too is just the way that you cut movies when
mhm.
analyzed like that almost always falls apart because a huge part of movies is like action reaction. They always say like
Mhm. Yeah.
acting is just reacting or whatever. And like that plays out in editing too. So
Right.
usually what happens is you show the thing happening and then you show sometimes one person, sometimes multiple people reacting to that. But if you were to put those on a timeline, like in real life, the reaction happens that the exact same moment as
Yeah.
the action, but you can't obviously show that in a single frame. So usually that is delayed, but that's just
Yeah.
part of sort of the cinematic language and it doesn't feel weird. But if you chop it down really small like that, it seems kind of hilarious, which
Yeah,
is
and I
fine.
agree with that, but there were other reasons within the scene as well that you don't even have to go to that, I feel like. Like, if I remember correctly, like he was just in an accident, the character, and was completely drugged out and waking up and was drowsy. And so like he's waking up, coming to, and as that's happening, the Joker is coming in the room, takes off his mask, and he immediately notices, "Oh, that's the Joker," and then like freaks out because he's mad at the Joker for
Yeah,
reasons from
right.
earlier in the movie. So that's what I'm saying. Is like a lot of people were like taking very seriously a GIF or a GIF like cut and edited out of context of the entire movie. That actually like that director said, when you actually watch the scene, there's a reason where which maybe that director meant what you were saying, but I thought it was just like, well, yeah, because if you watch the whole scene, like it made more sense why he was reacting that
Yeah, I
way.
mean that's directors and editors all the time have to make decisions of continuity versus having the emotional impact that's important. And
Right.
the best directors are the ones that can know where a continuity break isn't bad enough to take you out of a scene, and where you can have the emotional impact thing take precedence over that.
Right.
And that's a frequent thing in all sorts of movies. And sometimes they're like goofs, like they're just mistakes. But a
Yeah.
lot of the times, somebody spent hours agonizing over that decision on whether
Right.
to go with that or go with the other one. And if the only time you notice it is after somebody points it out to you, then they chose right.
How many hours do you think Michael Bay agonized over the decision to have green screen TVs in the background in Transformers 4? Or the Chicago skyline in the background of wherever they were supposed to be in China or Japan?
I think that's just a budgeting choice, probably. Like nobody's gonna care.
Yeah, exactly. I just, with movies that are paying that much money for things, it's sort of like, come on.
Yeah, but
You
there's
couldn't have fixed that.
so many shots.
It's almost insulting to the audience, though. It's
That's
like,
true. That's true.
our audience
If
won't
you
notice this is Chicago.
I mean, it's only insulting if you notice it while you're watching it.
Yeah, but everyone
Because
from Chicago would have immediately noticed, hey, that's here.
maybe, I mean, I don't know.
Like I would have noticed the silhouette of the arch in the background.
I don't know what shots you're talking about specifically.
I don't know. I just remember seeing a video about it, but
Yeah, like Jurassic Park has all sorts of amazing like I guess you'd call them bloopers, but where you can see like a camera person in the frame, or
no,
I think
yeah.
I've sent you that there's a gif of when the T-Rex is like picks up one of the raptors, the raptor
Mhm.
literally completely disappears for a frame. Like it was a rendering
Oh,
glitch. And
huh.
like obviously they knew it happened afterwards, but it was just too expensive to try and re-render that whole thing with,
Yeah.
early graphics like that. And they were like, nobody can tell, so we're just gonna leave it. And a lot of people, nobody noticed until some visual effects guy tweeted about it a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of stuff. Like I always think that's kind of fun. But no, if
Yeah.
if you're not gonna notice it while you're watching it, it's like who cares?
Yeah. That's yeah. That's fair enough. So I have written here that how we use social media. So I'm assuming you're talking more specifically, both of us and like how we
Yeah,
each.
I I like different social media platforms, and like I use all of them in a very different and specific way, but I've noticed that you use a lot of the same ones in very different ways than I do. So
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of curious to like poke into that and see.
Okay. Well, I use Twitter mainly for following people and news. That's my main source of like because like I'll follow major news organizations from multiple different perspectives, and then there's also some like fun accounts that I follow that I just think are funny. And some like scientists or podcasters that I like. But other than that, like it's mainly just to see what's going on in the world. Like there's not much that I do on Twitter that's from me.
Yeah, like do
Which
you
is
follow you don't follow like a lot of, not that you don't follow friends, but is it, do you interact with friends much on Twitter, or is it mostly
No, not at
just
all. Pretty
consumption?
much, honestly, on Twitter, if I ever interact with someone, it's typically someone I don't know at all. Um,
Yeah.
if I make a comment at all, I'll occasionally just talk to a stranger about something, whether it's like a TV show or something like that, or if someone famous actually interacts with me. Because like my biggest claims to fame were the author that we had talked about on the last podcast that mentioned me in a comment. This past week, I had another author and his wife like a review that I posted on Goodreads.
Oh man.
And then my biggest one was there was something that I posted in response to Ricky Gervais, and he actually liked the comment. So that was like huge.
Big moment, big moment.
That was because he's got like several millions of followers. but but yeah, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, so most of the time I just interact, if at all, with complete strangers on there. But it's mainly for like news and following trends and interacting with TV shows live.
Are you a Twitter completionist? Like, do you read every tweet in your timeline, or do you just kind of
Oh
open it
no,
up and scroll down kind
no,
of?
I use it for boredom. So like I'll go until I'm because like that's more of like a time filler. If I'm not looking specifically at like news or trends or looking for something, it's just if I'm scrolling past the feed, I go as far as till when if I'm sitting in the doctor's office, they say, "Hey, we're ready for you," or like something like that. Like it's like I'm not a completionist at
Yeah,
all.
that's, see, that's interesting. So for me, Twitter, it's sort of my, became my replacement for like RSS feeds, and I sort of always
Mm,
have treated it as that.
huh.
So I I read everything that comes through my Twitter timeline. And so as a result, that means that I have to be like, I have to really curate who I follow. Like I'm constantly changing who I follow based on what I'm interested in, because
Well, now you have me interested here. Let me check something because there might be a factor in play here. Let me find your account. So, oh
are you
no,
gonna look at how many I follow
yeah,
versus you?
that's weird. You follow 10 more. You follow 150 profiles. I follow 140, and you're a completionist.
Well, but keep in mind my who I follow is very curated too.
Oh, I follow 180. I'm sorry. So I do follow more than you, but not that much more.
But like I won't, whenever I first started it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna follow like The Verge and Engadget and all these different news accounts that I used to have on my RSS feed. But what I quickly found out is they tweet out every article they write. And so there's no way you can keep up with that.
Yeah.
So most of, not most, pretty much everything that I actually follow is a person.
Oh, okay.
And even that, if it's a person that tweets a whole lot, and it's, especially if it's kind of like cookie cutter, this person wrote this article or whatever, I
Yeah.
pretty quickly that person gets ejected from my feed.
Gotcha.
And so it's mostly a list um, of people who will either post interesting things or they retweet a lot of interesting things.
Oh, okay.
But it's a feed of news and jokes and information about the world curated by specific people that I know. Not know personally, but like I know who they are and kind of what their perspective is.
See, like I'm like maybe this is what you're saying in a different way. So let me know. But I feel like on Twitter I'm like part of like indirectly following like communities, like these like niche communities of people. And a lot of times they're conflicting. Like I say I get there for news, and there is some news that I get from Twitter and things that I follow. But the two main like spheres of or like groups of people that I follow on Twitter are come up basically in two stripes. One is like this very like skeptical community. And so it's like a lot of scientists or people that are like irreligious podcasters or like British secularists or like ex-Muslims of America or like different authors and things like that. And it's interesting because within that group, like you see a lot of disagreement even whenever you seem to think that there should be a lot of agreement on things. So
Right.
it's sort of interesting for me to follow. And then the other one is like this, like I don't know what you would call it, but like this alternative, like religious grouping of people like Rachel Held Evans or like Science Mike or Bad Christian Podcast or like all these various things. And it's kind of the same phenomenon there. You see a lot of disagreement or various views within that community as well.
But it's within a similarly viewpointed group of people, right?
Yeah, but part of it, I'll be honest, like part of it for me, it's just entertainment. Like it is things that I care about, don't get me wrong. Like they'll bring up issues that I think are important on in both of those groupings, but it's also just sort of like I like seeing what people are saying. Like for instance, last week, and not to get into this particular issue, there was like that whole kerfuffle in the religious community over like the Nashville statement.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of cool to see like all these differing viewpoints like from that grouping of people that I
It's
follow.
actually interesting you say that because I have only seen one viewpoint on that, which is pretty negative towards
Yeah.
it. Maybe
Well,
different ways of being negative towards it, but
it doesn't make much sense even if you agree with the sentiments of the statement. It was just sort of poorly worded, and that seemed to be kind of the dominant thread that I was picking up on, even by people that were sympathetic towards it.
yeah, I can't make a statement on it because I haven't actually really looked that much into it. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. So that's one of the interesting things about Twitter is that it's built around people. So you kind of have these webs, who you follow. You might follow somebody because you knew who they were or something outside of Twitter. But then because that person is liking and retweeting things, you start seeing people that person likes frequently. And then eventually you might start following them yourself. Like
Right.
you mentioned Rachel Evans, that's somebody who you used to retweet a lot or probably still do. And generally I was interested in what she said. And eventually
Right.
I kind of jumped on and started following her. And then that's sort of jumped me into that web. And then there might be people
Right.
that she tweets a lot about or whatever. And
Right.
so you have these sort of organic, interesting lines that you build up in your follows there. But what
Mhm.
happens is those are typically in the same vein. Like you don't stray super far from a viewpoint. You're pretty well contained. Kind of like if you're part of a religion, there's lots of different viewpoints within that religion, but
Yeah.
you don't really see much outside of that. Like a lot of Southern Baptists don't even know hardly anything about the world of like Methodists.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
True.
probably really big Methodist book authors or something that like a Southern Baptist doesn't even know that person's name. Like it's
But see, I feel like I break that a little bit because don't get me wrong, I have my biases and some people that I definitely could care less to follow because their views don't really fit mine, but there's certainly people that I follow specifically. Like for instance, the two types of ideological groupings that I mentioned, those are like diametrically opposed.
yeah, yeah,
Like they're not
like a
like
Christian group
even
and a like science secular group.
yeah, exactly. And so like
But my point isn't that you're doing that. My point is actually I think you kind of did that intentionally, right?
right.
So, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is with Twitter, you have these organic groupings that form. But I try to, and I feel like this takes intentional curation. I've tried to make sure that I force other groupings in there. So like
Oh, gotcha.
especially during the election, Twitter generally speaking, especially if you follow entertainment people or science people, is going to lean pretty far left.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
I had to actively seek out voices on the right, which
Right.
meant a whole lot of following people that I just didn't like at all until I finally landed on a couple people. But once you get those couple
Yeah.
people, then you get a little like group that sort of forms over there. And that keeps my timeline in this sort of, when a news event happens, I'm getting the opinions and likes of people in a couple different circles and their sort of reactions to it all kind of at once, which I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Twitter is like this awesome tool, but because of the sort of natural web framework of it, you have to be kind of intentional about curating an experience for you to keep you from just forming this bubble where you think the whole world thinks what I think. How could this
Right.
crazy person outside of there not think that? And the
Right.
people in that other bubble are thinking the exact same thing about you.
Right, which is like I think we kind of talked about this like gut reaction like on that people have on our first episode when we were talking about like division and how people like talk about politics. Like I think yeah, it's very easy to get inside the echo chamber and just not get why other people think differently. And I agree with you. Like I try to I think it's if you can't come up with a reason why um or you don't understand why someone could possibly vote for one of the presidents in any given time, like even if you think that that person is horrible, like then you're just in an echo chamber. Like
Right.
there's plenty of reasons, even if I might
Yeah.
not agree with them. Like there's plenty of reasons.
Right. They could be wrong, but at least there is an intellectual argument
Right.
for something that a huge amount of people think.
Exactly. Yeah. And so yeah, it's an interesting point.
So it's interesting that whenever you talked about Twitter, you sort of said it's formed these groups around specific topics,
Yeah.
because that is how I would describe how I use Reddit.
Oh, that makes sense though.
Reddit is like, take what I like about Twitter, but completely divorce it from it being around people and
Yeah.
instead make the central core thing around topics. So you might be
Mhm.
talking to a neo-Nazi, but you both love flags, and that just never comes up because you're just talking about how you're
Right.
really excited about this New Zealand flag referendum together.
Right.
And so it has a totally different feel, and I really, really like it for that. Obviously, it has a different use.
Yeah.
But so with Reddit, this is all maybe trying to convince you to maybe try it out a little bit more.
I will in the future. It's right now I just don't really have a desire or time that I want to cut out for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like another thing that I'm sure is completely interesting because like there's like book series and stuff that I absolutely know there's Reddits for that I would love to dig into, but it's just like that's a vortex of time that I really
Right.
should be spending elsewhere, and I already like procrastinate stuff as is. So
Yeah, and I use Reddit the way that you were describing using Twitter, in that if I am, I've finished off my Reddit feed, which is sort of a curated thing that I want to make sure I read, and I'm just
right,
at the doctor, I'm waiting for a doctor's appointment or something, I'll just pop on Reddit and kind of like scroll through the main feed that I have, and then maybe pop into some specific subreddits if I want to or whatever. Um, but then Reddit is the only network that I find myself actually contributing to it all,
hmm
because it's not attached to me personally. Like if you really want to, you could figure out who I am. It's not like I'm using some super obscure username, but like it's not like connected to my family. Like I can freely post something on the podcasting subreddit about um how does how can I solve this problem with RSS feeds that I'm dealing with? And I'm not going to have like my mom see that or my aunt see that and be like, "Oh, he's thinking about starting a podcast. I'm going to ask him about that." And I'm not quite ready to like bring that up. You know what I'm saying?
right,
So like
yeah, um,
you end up in these much more intimate conversations. You don't feel like everybody's listening to you. And maybe you don't, but that's how I feel on Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, I'll say this. That brings up an interesting point because I was going to mention this, and I'm glad you brought that up. So now I know like several people listen to this that this might cause a change in this tide, but
Whoa.
basically, I use one thing that I like about Twitter is a lot of people that I would be more careful about saying things about on Facebook. I don't have them on Twitter, or they don't have Twitter accounts, or they're not following me, or I'm not
Yeah.
friends with them. And so, like, there's some things that I don't, like I said, I don't really use Twitter much for saying things of my own. But when I do, like, there's been a couple times where I'll interact with people on sort of like a debate level, and just to like see where they stand on something. And sometimes it can get, I wouldn't say heated, because I very selectively choose people I talk to, but sometimes it's gotten a little out of hand. And I can tell you now, there's things I would talk to people about or be more blunt with people about, whereas I wouldn't do that publicly. Or, you know, I'm not saying I'm being mean to people or anything. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
it's just different. Like when you don't have an audience and you're just talking to anyone and everyone, it's a different sort of like leash that you give yourself than you would on Facebook.
Absolutely. And that to me is what's so cool. Like if I were to lay the three main social networks I use out, I would put Facebook first, Twitter second, and Reddit third. With Facebook on the left being the most like public facing in my view thing, which is weird because it's kind of more private than Twitter, but
Yeah.
not for my life. My circle, if I post anything to Facebook, everybody I know is probably going to see that, or at least I will assume that that person's going to see that, right?
Yeah.
And then Twitter is sort of in the middle where it's like there's this sort of security by obscurity concept of like I generally know the population of people I know that use Twitter. And like what you were just saying, I can kind of, there's a different sort of barrier of entry for me being willing to have a conversation there.
Right.
And like, even more so if it's a reply to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm tweeting it myself at like sort of the top level, I know everybody who I know that uses Twitter will see it. And then if I'm replying to somebody, you know, only a select few people are really going to see that. And it's not like I'm
Right.
doing anything nefarious. It's just
Yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to say, like, I don't want people, because, like, for instance, I know some family members or friends that aren't friends with me on Twitter, like, listen to this podcast, and like, I feel weird, like, trying to
yeah,
clarify, like,
yeah.
it's not like I'm like getting on there and I'm like a whole different person and like cussing people out and you know,
Right. It's all
whatever.
public
It's
and I
just,
still don't
yeah,
ever post
exactly.
anything that I would be embarrassed by. It's
Hmm.
more of like would I have this conversation with somebody I know in a public forum versus would I like post this on a billboard? You know what I
Well,
mean?
I'll give you an example. So, like, for instance, I know that there's some people in my family that, like, if you were to phrase a debate about something in a certain way, they might think like, "Oh, I didn't know he thought that." And a lot of times, I'll like debate like that, but not because, or just have a conversation with someone like that. Not even debate, but just having a conversation with someone about something that might be controversial. And the nice thing about not having the audience, if you will, is you can play devil's advocate without having to worry about like what if someone misconceives what I'm trying
Yes.
to say
Right.
or how I'm saying it. You don't have to worry about how you say something to make sure that everyone that you know and have to interact with on a regular basis makes sure they understood correctly what you were trying to do.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and
like
that's really all it is. It's not because because of course, especially when you're talking about family, like they're like, "Oh, I didn't know he thought that. I'm worried about him." And it's like, "Yeah, but I don't think that. I'm just trying to have a conversation with someone about this topic that's
right.
very loaded."
Yeah, like there's an amazing subreddit. I think I've tried to convince you to look at it called Change My View, which is like
Oh, okay.
this is a thing about Reddit too is that they're all moderated, which is a thing you don't
Mm.
get on Twitter or Facebook either. So like different subreddits have very different rules, and this subreddit called Change My View has very very strict rules. So it's like somebody will post a idea, and the idea and the point of it is I want somebody to convince me or at least change my views somewhat on this topic.
Yeah.
And then every top level response to that has to be a like legitimate sort of rebuttal to that. No jokes or anything like that. And then obviously the responses to that don't have to rebut the first topic, but like it kind of spawns these interesting conversations. And then there's a point system, and you award people, deltas is what they're called, for if they've
Hmm.
successfully done it. But the point is, it like forces this super civil conversation. Like they will post really controversial subjects sometimes, and the moderators, if people start getting heated, they're really quick to like cut that off. And so people are very very intentional about being like super civil and like willing to have a tough conversation about a heated argument.
Yeah.
But like you wouldn't want to have that conversation in that way on Facebook, because I can already think of like 10 people I know who would just like freak out if you even entertained the idea of a certain viewpoint. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Right.
so like there's this sort of safety in that obscurity of a network. And then, Reddit specifically, it's like unless they're in that subreddit too, they're not going to see that. And if they're in that subreddit, then they're already in an environment where they understand sort of the context of how you're talking.
Right. And with that said, it's interesting. Like, yeah, Facebook, I typically am more reserved. But I will say this, like I use that for most social interactions, like with families. I use events and all that stuff, the whole nine yards. Reply to people in comments, like things, friends, and stuff like that. But I will say this: there's a little bit of carryover from this previous sort of thing we've been talking about with uses for Twitter and Reddit that I have with Facebook. Except the difference is there's a specific closed group that I'm a part of that's just part of a podcast network that I found, and the group there is just like absolutely amazing. They're really open about like pretty much anything if you have disagreements about stuff. And I found myself spending a lot of time there as well because it's sort of like a comfortable, like, oh, you can
Yeah.
just talk about anything. And even if 90% of the people here disagree with you, you know that 99.9% of them are going to have a decent response back to you if they respond. And so there is a little bit of that, which is what I use Facebook for as well. But I will say that most of my Facebook use is typically overtaken by just general interactions with family,
Right.
friends, and
Yeah.
keeping up with. I do Facebook stalk people occasionally. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that person from high school.
It's a
Like,
really,
and
really great tool for, yeah, keeping up with people that you know, but you don't get to actually see in everyday life. Like my
exactly.
wife's family is spread out across the country. One of them actually just moved to Japan with their whole family, which is I'm very excited and interested in. Um, but like Facebook has always been this tool to keep her family feeling close.
Yeah.
And when people make fun of it, that's always my quick go to. It's like this is a way that her family has been able to stay, like whenever we meet, we're not meeting with strangers, we're meeting with people whose lives we are invested in and still know what's going on. And that to me is like amazing.
Yeah.
You know what, this will probably never really get used, but I am going to make a town subreddit,
Okay.
and then I'm going to force you to create a profile, and you never even really have to look at it. But
I'm actually thinking about it because during this discussion, I looked up to see if a certain Reddit page existed that I would love to participate in, and it does.
yeah, there is a subreddit for everything. Now, this is probably the point where I should give a warning for anybody who's listening to this and thinking, "Oh, Reddit sounds nice." Uh, like all things on the internet, there is a sort of
There is the dark web.
yeah, less than family friendly element to it.
Yeah.
But with Twitter and Facebook, you're not going to run into that unless, with Facebook, your family members are a part of that unsavory part of the web.
Right.
And on Twitter, the people you intentionally follow are part of that unsavory part of the web. But with Reddit, you can end up there, you know, on a search term on accident a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And so if you're
The furry subreddit is not a place for people that just like furry animals. FYI.
and that's the thing. Like my wife recently, I got her kind of onto Reddit, and she's really liking it. Whenever she
Oh
was
no,
first
did she go to
getting
the furry subreddit? Is that where we're going?
and whenever I was setting up her account, I was kind of like, I was trying to set it up and get like some subreddits that I thought, you know, some teaching things or whatever, which I don't even know what ones she's part of now. But you know, I'd be searching for different things, and every once in a while in your search results, you'll see one, and you just kind of have that like reaction to
Yeah.
it. So it's not like you're accidentally gonna see something. It's just it's just a little bit more. I don't know. I don't want to be responsible for somebody accidentally seeing a subreddit title that they are going to associate with me recommending. I just want to warn everybody.
Yeah.
But I would quickly recommend, you know, the Change My View subreddit is amazing.
You're not even wondering what Reddit page I was wanting to join?
Yeah. What Reddit page were you wanting to join?
It is the Cosmere Reddit, which is
What is Cosmere?
it is a wonderful thing, Charlie. I have told you about it before, and you have put it out of sight, out of mind.
I guess
and
I'm
don't
assuming it's
care.
comic book related.
No, it's novel related. It's a fantasy author named Brandon Sanderson that like creates his own world, and it's
okay.
very different stuff. And all of his different series are in a connected galaxy, which is really bizarre franchising in books. And so there's like this decades, and well, he's only been around on the scene for about 16 years now, I guess. But there's like this decade long overarching narrative that he's been creating, a meta narrative, if you will. And it's like he's announced 4 more different series in addition to the 4 that are already going. And so like I guess over the next like the rest of his career for like the next 20, 30 years, he's just going to be writing these standalone individual series that are also have this meta narrative behind them of this crazy stuff going on. So there's a subreddit for it, or a Reddit page for it, with a bunch of subreddits.
Which I guarantee you, it has an active community that talks about it all the time. And
oh yeah, it does. I'm scrolling through it right now, and this is gonna be my life now.
Yes, I've
just this
converted another one over
Reddit.
to the dark side.
Right. Cosmere Furry. No. I'm just kidding. What is that? Speaking of furries, you can include this or not. I don't care, but I just wanted to mention this. So, Nick and his wife were in town this weekend,
Whoa.
and so we wanted to do more like St. Louis stuff. And we went to the Botanical Gardens, and it was Japanese festival weekend or something like that.
Thing.
And I had this moment where this is the first time this has happened to me in like real time, where I kind of like had this weird like, oh my God, am I like having this like crazy like what everybody says is like crazy uber liberal viewpoint that just came out of me real quick, because we were walking around and it's Japanese festival. And so like a lot of weird people have taken upon themselves to treat this as if it's Comic-Con. And not most of them. Most of them are there for the gardens and like all the food and all the like really cool stuff that they were doing. But there was just some younger, and it was all younger people. It was nobody that was actually Asian or anything that were there for what it was there for. And like, so it was really weird. And like Nick's wife, we're walking and she goes, wow, that's super racist. And I remember like something like clicked and I was like, oh, it kind of is, isn't it? Because there's just like all these like normal like white people like dressed up in like super uber like Asian like culture things, and it was like very like over the top and flamboyant.
Is that racist, or is that cultural appropriation, is that the term?
Yeah, I don't like that because that kind of bugs me too. Because,
Oh, we could have a whole
well,
conversation about that.
yeah, we
I don't
probably
know exactly
could.
where I stand on it, but I've always been confused by that topic.
Okay, well, let me say this for the time being. Let's not talk about terminology because I could be very off on terminology. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to use buzzwords because they typically get controversial without laying down some context.
Right, right.
But with that said, just the act of like being very obviously over the top, flamboyant, and these aren't like people dressing up as characters. Some of them were, to be fair, but a lot of it's just like, oh, this is what manga characters dress like, and it's just
Oh, yeah.
crazy hair and
They all look like they're
katanas
out
and
of Dragon Ball Z.
yeah, and it was just sort of like, okay, I can kind of see that being a little insensitive. Whatever phrase you want to attach to it. That was like all of a sudden it just kind of clicked. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of is because like, what if it was like another country and everybody's just wearing cowboy straw hats and like
But see,
overalls? I mean, I'm
I
like,
mean,
oh, it's America Day,
I obviously
and
can't actually understand. You know what I mean? Like I'm not part of I live in America as a white straight guy, right? But
yeah,
like to me, I feel like I'd be like, "Yay, people are into a thing that my culture
yeah,
produces."
that's
But
my
I
neat.
also I do know that people get annoyed by that, so I'm not trying to say that they're wrong. I'm just saying like my gut reaction would be like I would think that I would like that. Like if I was in Japan and I was at, America Garden Day and everybody's wearing like jorts and uh America print denim, I'd be
Yeah,
like, haha, that's awesome. Like, I would think it's funny.
yeah.
But
I also don't know
I
if it's
also wouldn't be
different
part of a
though.
like marginalized group in Japan either. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is like I guess I mentioned that all to come back and say like I really don't know how I feel about it because I also think like, well, then what are you gonna do with Comic Con? Because that is awesome, and
yeah, yeah,
like, how are you gonna regulate that? What's okay and what's not? Because then again, like I said, even in this conversation, I made a distinction. Like, if someone's dressed up as a character, then it's like, oh, well, that's fine. They're dressing up as a character from like a TV show, like. But
right,
if the same person dresses that exact same way, but not a specific character,
yeah.
all of a sudden it's kind of like, what are you doing? But I don't know. I just thought it was sort of weird because like I had like a conflicting opinion at the same time and was like going back and forth on it. That's all.
I don't really want to bring this up again, but why was that speaking of furries?
Oh, because there because some of the costumes we saw were a lot of cat ears and tails, and
Oh, okay, okay.
there was a big chipmunk suit guy walking around, and we were like, okay, let's get out of here. And it was
Nothing like
all
a
very
a
disturbing.
tranquil stroll through a Japanese garden with a man in a
Right.
chipmunk suit strolling
Yes.
past.
Yeah. And he started like waving and like coming our way from a distance. I was like, let's
Just makes
we're
me think of that.
we're about to get in trouble because I'm hitting this guy if he gets near me.
What was that show where they would like
Trigger
attack
happy
people?
TV.
Trigger happy
It
TV.
was very much so like that. Yes.
Oh
Oh
man,
God. Anyways, back on topic.
what was the topic?
You can cut this part, but like I feel like we're not gonna be able to get to every single social media app that we use right this second. So I figure we should space
I
that
mean, I
out.
feel like we covered everything.
Yeah. Well, there's others. There's Instagram. There's all kinds of stuff, Goodreads, and all kinds of stuff. But it depends on how far you're wanting to stretch. But
Oh, I was thinking the big three, but I guess that's a good.
yeah,
I don't really
that's
use
good.
the other one, so I don't know.
Right. But then that's what you were asking. What do you use and how do you use it?
That's a good point.
Yeah. But anyways,
Well, okay, give me the quick rundown. You don't have to go in deep, but like we kind of talked
okay.
about
So
Facebook,
just real.
Twitter, and Reddit are kind of similar things with a different focus. What are the other ones that you use?
So just real quick, other like social media stuff that I use is I guess now I'm going to be a Reddit user as of this podcast.
Yes.
I also use Goodreads. Let me think. I do use YouTube. Would you consider that social media in some form?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I use Instagram as an online picture gallery. Just kind of keep stuff there. Uh, yeah, that's kind of the main ones I use. There's other things, but that you could consider having a social component, but that's mainly it. but the big three, you're right, is Facebook, Twitter,
You're
and
not
I guess
you're not a
Reddit.
Snapchat user?
I am not like none of that. Like
Have you
what is
tried?
that? Periscope, Snapchat. No, I don't have a need for it.
See, I'm weird. I
I
mean, I think it's just because I like apps and design and just stuff like that. But as soon as that became a thing, I downloaded it and tried it, and like that's the first time I've really felt old. This was like 5 years ago or
yeah.
however many years ago. It's like I cannot navigate that thing, and I don't.
See, I feel like I could navigate it. I just have no interest in doing the things that it's designed to do, and that's the part that makes me feel old. Is like it's
Yeah,
not that I don't get it, it's that I don't want to use it.
and it
It's
might
sort of
be
like
that it's way more, or at least whenever I was first doing it, or whenever I looked at it, it was way more about actual interactions with your friends. And like most
yeah,
social media things I use, it's more like consuming stuff other people do, and then maybe as I understand the platform, I start contributing.
yeah.
But I don't like sending, like, most of the people I know that use Snapchat, they're just sending like themselves making ugly faces at each other over and over again.
Right.
Which, like, I
Yeah.
can totally understand why that's funny, but like,
Well, I think it
isn't for
originally
me.
started with more nefarious roots, but
Really?
developed into something a bit
Oh,
more
oh
mainstream.
yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, no. Now that you say
You
that,
take a picture and it disappears. So,
that's why I originally downloaded it.
right.
I couldn't make it work.
And I had to keep denying your friend requests. No, Charlie, I'm not going to get Snapchat.
Come on, Dan. They disappear. I promise. They're deleted forever.
Yeah. What is this? Furries _Chapman?
I feel like
That
I
has to
mean, I'm
stay
pretty
in.
sure I know what that is, but I kind of feel like I need to confirm that it's not worse than what I'm thinking.
There's a less benign version of what furries is at a base level. If you want to go with the most charitable interpretation, furries are essentially like my understanding, as hilariously described on the Dave Glover show when they had a whole hour talking
Oh
about it once
man.
he figured out what it was. It's just basically a community of people that like cosplaying animals and acting like them and getting together like in the park and like acting like dogs or cats or
I got you. You can just climb trees in a squirrel costume, and
yeah.
you've met the description, the
I
bar.
guess, yeah. I don't know how many animals branch out or if it's just anything furry goes, but you don't have to keep in the
Man.
description of furries, but you should definitely leave it in the rest of the jokes.
Oh, I plan on it. That's why I was like, I need to Google it and make sure that I'm not accidentally leaving in something that's like way
Yeah, don't
worse than
Google
I was
image that
thinking.
stuff.
I'm not.
'Cause
I'm
sure
not
people
that
are going,
dumb.
okay.
I'm thinking like a dictionary kind of thing. Text only.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
man.
God.
I finally like nailed down my sort of first round of upgrades for podcasting equipment. So I got
Mhm.
like a boom arm and a shock mount stand and a new mic. And I ordered it last week, and I was like really excited about it, right? And
Mhm.
a rare thing happened, which is Amazon, because they were the ones actually shipping it. It wasn't like a third party company or whatever. They like it said it was supposed to ship and it didn't ship. And then it got to the day it was expected to be delivered and it still hadn't shipped. And I went on their support and would ask them, and they're like, "Oh, it should ship in a couple days." And they kept telling me that over and over again. And they gave me like a $5 discount, which was great because it was only a $40 mic, so that was like what 20% off or something.
Yeah.
But it was I was getting pretty frustrated, and to the point of getting kind of, I was like a little perturbed maybe.
Yeah.
And it finally shipped today, and I was all excited. And as soon as I looked at the shipping information, it said shipping out of Houston, Texas. And I
Ooh.
immediately felt like a total jerk.
Especially yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
And like
that's
they
pretty
gave me a
awful.
discount on it, and they were like really nice about
Right.
it, but they never invoked the like, hey, I know your mic's getting here late, but sorry, we're a little focused on like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people's lives being completely uprooted. Like
Now that is horrible, but I will say there are some shipping tendencies that Amazon has that I totally get from a business perspective, and it makes all the sense in the world, but I sort of am irrationally, and I admit that, angry about how they do things. So there's been a couple of times where like this is what happened last week. So I ordered a school book that I need for a class. That's an 8-week course, so it's expedited, and I really need this book. Like I'm going off like a library lend at the moment.
Right.
And so I need this book in the mail, and Amazon shipped it out. And then like Wednesday, I ordered something like small for like $5, and then again on like Friday. And because of how they do things, they're grouping them together. So the first order has gotten stalled so that it can ship in the same box with the next two
Yeah, that's
items.
annoying.
And I'm sure now I remember seeing this somewhere, but I guess that's my problem is I don't know where it's at. Like I guess somewhere in the order it says like group items together, and I just don't ever remember seeing that, or it's not something I'm thinking about like as I'm filling out the order because it's not.
Well, and now I don't know if you're doing it from your phone, but now it's such a
Yeah.
streamlined thing. Like I don't even think about it. Like this morning, I ordered a weed whacker and like went from the process of I need to look at this to like I've purchased one and it's going to show up at my house in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That was a weird feeling.
Yeah, and it's I normally use the phone though. It's I don't think I've ordered anything off the Amazon website, like full website in years.
Oh, I mean I
Um
use their website still.
I'm more of an app person. The only thing that I do online like that is Audible because iPhone has like weird tendencies that they don't allow you to purchase store stuff from the apps through the iPhone.
Oh, right.
Like they cut weird deals with third party apps, and it's super annoying. So I have to actually get on the full website for things like that. But
Yeah, so I'm recording this on half of my new setup. Here,
nice.
I'm gonna send you a picture.
You've only begun to hurt our voices, audience.
Yeah, yes. It only gets worse the more accurate it gets. Just to warn
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah, if I sound weird today, I'm coming off of a cold, so I have a little bit of extra bass probably, but I'm also a little more scratchy.
Right.
I feel like I should address the weird ending to the last episode. Did you actually listen to that?
I didn't get that far because I saw there was like 3 minutes left, and I was doing something. And I was like, I know what the last 3 minutes are. I don't need it.
Good to know that the people who create it don't even listen to the whole thing.
Well, I know what happens. We talked about our shirts and stuff.
Yeah, so we had gotten the shirt thing all set up and we were ready to go and recorded the episode, and then the hurricane stuff all happened, and
Right.
both of us felt, I think, pretty bad about asking people for money whenever there was some bad stuff going on in the world and people who actually needed help. And so we were like, you know what, let's just donate that to the
Yeah, and also just a little bit of like I like the idea that if we have any sort of reach whatsoever, which I realize I don't have a big head about, this is not much, but
yeah.
even if we did have anything, it's like, hey, we have something. Why don't we use that to actually do something with it and not just like you always say, talk out into the void.
Yeah.
Um,
So
like it actually accomplished something worthy.
we decided that like the night before launching that episode, which was also launching the shirt thing, which I was pretty wrapped up in. So once we decided, nailed that down, I just ran down and recorded that really quick and came up and just kind of threw it in there. But like that was the beginning of this really bad cold, and I didn't really notice it when I recorded it, when I shoved it in there, but I always listen in the car after I launch to make sure there's no, bugs. On my way to work, I'll listen to it just to make sure there's nothing I need to like correct and it sounds okay in car speakers. And when it got to that, I was like, oh my gosh, I sound like such a, I don't know, tool. Like I sound like I was trying to do like a narrator voice or something. It was bad. I was kind of
Well,
embarrassed about the whole thing.
the great thing about A-Town is you know what we always say. It's a good time for second chances.
You want a second chance to deliver that?
That's our motto. Second chances, we always get it.
There you go.
Third chance. Okay. But no, but yeah, so I mean, once again, then I mean, we made some really cool shirts that come in multiple different colors and cuts for both men and women, and we also lowered the price on them because we figured out that there was like a weird profit margin that we weren't taking into account from
Oh
the
yeah,
website.
that was the other thing. That whole thing was
Yeah,
kind of a debacle.
right. But we kind of got the bugs worked out now, so we are selling the shirts a little bit cheaper, and I'm fine doing it a couple more weeks. Actually, I mean, I don't know how long that they need help for, but maybe like another week or so.
Yeah.
We could do that. So if people still want to buy a shirt that are really cool and funny now that you actually understand the significance of the water tower, and if people in all the different countries that listen to our podcast want to sponsor that shirt, though you'll probably have more shipping costs getting it to a different
Yeah,
country.
I actually did confirm they do ship to at least the UK.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, shipping is a lot higher, I think.
Right. Maybe we could get one of our UK listeners to like smuggle those over the borders
There
and
you go. Yeah.
we are not officially endorsing any sort of illegal international activities on this podcast.
Dan's
Forewarning.
not.
All right, but anyways, yeah, that's legal. We could do that because I'm the one that suggested it, and you didn't say anything. So you saying Dan's not still is a loophole.
Yeah.
Anyways,
And who the heck knows what the laws are in regards to things between the US and the UK right now, right? We're still in the middle of
exactly.
of Brexit, right?
Brexit. Yep.
Yeah, see, we're up on UK politics.
Yeah, we know what's going on.
Yeah.
When that happened last month, guys, it just felt so bad.
Last month.
Right. And but anyway, so we're gonna still do the shirts for another week or so, and
Well, they'll just be up. Like we have a store on our page.
yeah, eventually in the future, it'll go towards like helping us get better sound equipment or whatever for the time being. And but for right now, like we'd like to donate all the profits that we make to the Houston relief stuff. I think we're just gonna stick with Red Cross, but if we find something better, because I know some people have like weird specific stuff about like how Red Cross efficiently does this or that, but typically they're the go-to organization. They do a pretty good job. So but if we find anything better, we'll update all our social media. But for now, that's kind of the goal, and anything you want to do to help, that would be great. We bought shirts as well ourselves, and so I'm looking forward to wearing that bad boy.
Sweet.
And if anybody wants to find us, where are all the places they can find us, Charlie?
All right, so we have atownfm.com, and then all of our social media accounts will be atownfm. On Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, if you want to listen there. And then before this episode goes live, we will have a subreddit, which I have confirmed while we're recording. atownfm is open, so it'll be reddit.com/r/atownfm.
Yeah, and then also, if anybody likes the podcast, you like listening, leave us a review on iTunes specifically. We would love that. I think we have a couple. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look at it again. It's been a while. But we appreciate all that, and that definitely helps us. Leave a good review on there or Facebook.
And I really, really, really want to see your guys' water towers. And that was, what was that hashtag?
Yeah.
Hashtag A-Town Water Tower? Or A-Town Tower?
It was hashtag A-Town Tower.
Okay, hashtag A-Town Tower. There you go.
Yeah, send us your water towers. And that's on all social media, both Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit.
And anywhere that you're from, let us know somewhere. I get really excited when I find out somebody from a different country.
Yeah, we're in double digits.
But I also would be really excited to hear about people from different states. And our stats don't give me that detailed of information. So if there's somebody from Wyoming that listens, or I should pick a more populous state that actually has a chance, from California that listens, I would be super excited. I totally geek out every time I see anything that somebody says. So
yeah, just leave a comment on a post or on our page on either Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Just say, hey, I'm from XYZ state.
Yeah, and we will post your flag everywhere.
We are pretty responsive as well, so because we like interaction with people. So we've had a couple of good conversations with people in the past. So yeah, let's keep it up.
Cool.